We are starting with the chapter 3, that is tissues in action. When you speak about tissue, we have to first start with a cell. So a cell will divide to form a group of cells, and this will continue forever for the cells. And then a few cells with the same function and structure or with some kind of similarity will combine together in order to form a tissue. And a group of tissues together will form the organ, and organs together will form the organ system, and organ systems together will form the organism. So this flow is very, very important. But what is the reason for the formation of the tissue? It is for the division of labor, because not every cell will perform every function which happens in an organism. So the group of cells will be for performing a specific function. So there is a division of labor, and it increases the efficiency of the body, and the complex life processes will be happening. But there will be different kinds of tissues in both plants and animals. We have different kinds in both. That is because in plants we do not see the mobility, whereas in animals we find mobility, and their mode of nutrition is also different in comparison to plants and animals. So in this video we'll be completing with various plant tissues. So first, plants will grow in different ways. That is in terms of their length, in terms of their girth, and in order to regrow. So once if you cut a branch or something, how will it regrow? So these are all the three things in which plant grows. So in order to understand this, you need to understand the very first, that is the meristematic tissue. So the cells which are in the dividing phase, they are called the meristematic cells, and they will form the meristematic tissue. There are three different kinds in them. That is the apical meristem, lateral meristem, and intercalary meristem. So apical meristem will help in the increase in length, lateral meristem will help in the girth, and the intercalary meristems will help in the regrowth. So this apical meristem will be primarily present in the root and the shoot tips. That is where the growth will happen in the lengthwise. So this girth is the how thick the trunk will become. So that will show us that will happen with the help of the lateral meristems. And the intercalary meristems is where if the root or the shoot tips are cut for this particular plant, then there will be nodes, and there will be internode space as well. Above these nodes, there will be the growth of several branches, and this is where the intercalary meristem will take a part in the regrowth process. So the characteristics of these cells, the meristematic cells, are they are small and thin cell walls, and they have large and a prominent nucleus, and they have a dense cytoplasm with many organelles, and vacuoles are almost absent for them, and there is no intercellular space in between these cells. So these are all the characteristics of these meristematic cells. So these meristematic cells, some of them after a period of time will lose their ability to divide, and they will become the permanent cells. So the process by which the meristematic cells will become permanent cells, so the way they become, so that is called the differentiation. So it is the way or the method, or it is the process by which the meristematic cells will become permanent cells, which is called differentiation. So now speaking of these permanent tissues in much more detail. So these permanent tissues can be of three categories. That is, they can be simple tissue, complex tissue, or protective tissues. In simple tissue, you will find the Parenchyma, Collenchyma, and Sclerenchyma. In complex, you will find Xylem and Phloem. Protective tissue will include Epidermis. So this Parenchyma, Collenchyma, and Sclerenchyma together are called the supporting tissue or the ground tissue. The complex tissues, which is Xylem and Phloem, are useful in conducting, and so they are called conducting tissues. Well, the protective tissue is the epidermis. So we'll read all this in detail one by one. Starting with the protective tissue. So that is the epidermis. So epidermis is a tightly packed, and they'll have the flat rectangular cells. And on top of this, you will find the cuticle layer, which is a waxy layer of cutin. And in the epidermis, you will have these hair kind of structures which will increase the surface area for it. For example, it is present in the root hairs. You will find root hairs. So with this increase in surface area, it will be able to absorb more water and nutrients. And in leaves, we'll also see that the epidermis will contain stomata, which is small pores which will help in transpiration processes. So this is all you will find in the protective tissue section. Next, moving to the ground tissue, that is the supporting tissue, which includes simple tissue. That is, you will find similar kind of cells combined together. So this is the parenchyma, collenchyma, and the sclerenchyma. So in parenchyma, you will find the living, in collenchyma living, but in sclerenchyma, it is important that it is not living. And in parenchyma, we have collenchyma and aerenchyma according to the functions which they perform. So the parenchyma cells are loosely packed with thin walls, and the one parenchyma which stores food and it's involved in photosynthesis is called Collenchyma, while that which is present in aquatic plants, which provides the air spaces so that it floats. So the aquatic plant is able to float. So then it is called the Aerenchyma. In Collenchyma, which will have a lot of pectin deposition in it, and it will support flexibility will be provided, and it will bend without breaking because it is living cells, it is having living cells. And Sclerenchyma will have lignin depositions which will provide the woody structure. So they will not bend without breaking, they will break. And they have thick walls and is found in stem, leaf, veins, and hard coverings of seeds and nuts. And it's important to remember that is not living. So next, moving to the conducting tissue, that is the xylem and the phloem. So why it is called conducting? Because xylem will help in the flow of water and minerals, while phloem will help in the food conduction. And xylem will be in the one direction, that is from root to the other plants, but at phloem you will have bidirectional flow. And xylem will also provide strength to the plant. So there is 4 categories in xylem as well, which we'll find the tracheids, vessels, xylem parenchyma, and xylem fibers. So all these tracheids, vessels, and xylem fibers are not living, but only the xylem parenchyma is living. And tracheids and vessels are tubular and they are thick-walled. So this is all you have to remember in the xylem part. In phloem part, we will find the sieve tubes, companion cells, phloem, parenchyma, and fibers. It is important to remember that only fibers, that is the phloem fibers, is not living and rest all are living in phloem, which is quite opposite to what happens in the xylem part. And the sieve tubes, when you read about them, they lack the nucleus because they have to transport food to accommodate huge amount of food. They'll have no nucleus and they are long and tubular in nature. And they will transport food from leaf to other parts of the body. The companion cells will monitor the loading and unloading of sugar, and they'll help or aid the sieve tubes. And the phloem parenchyma will store food materials and resins, tannins, and latex. And this phloem fibers is the one which supports the sieve tubes and it provides strength. So this is all you have to learn in the conducting tissue part, that is the xylem and phloem. So apart from these all things which we have learned here, that is the permanent tissues and the meristematic tissues, we have various kinds of tissue systems, that is the thermal tissue system, ground tissue system, and vascular tissue system. The thermal tissue system is the one which is the outer covering, while the vascular is the conducting tissue. In between these both is the ground tissue. And the thermal tissue, and it will protect the inner parts and it will reduce the water loss to happen. That means it primarily includes the epidermis part. Well, the ground tissue will find the parenchyma, collenchyma, and sclerenchyma, which is the ground tissue systems. And the vascular tissues, as it is conductive tissue, that is the xylem and phloem. So the important names to remember in this plant tissue part is B.G.L. Swami, who has worked on plant morphology and anatomy, and he has written the book called Hasuri Honu. And other important personalities are Sipra Guha Mukherjee along with S.C. Maheshwari have worked or have made a breakthrough in plant tissue culture. So with this, we have completed all about information which is provided in NCERT Tissues in Action with regard to plants. In the next part, we'll be completing the animal tissues.